All right. Well, everything is better the second time around, especially when it's a remix of the first time around. See what I did there? So that is the name of our series that we're in right now is Remix, because we're basing it on a premise, and the premise is this, is that sometimes we hear something, and when we hear it over and over and over again, it actually kind of goes somewhere in the back of our head, and it loses value and loses meaning. But yet, somewhere along the line, somebody takes what we've heard before and remixes it and does something new and adds something upon it. And Jesus does that actually in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, which is what we've based this series on. But before we get into that, jumping back into music, I heard some of you were having a problem with me last week in that I said, you were old if you knew who the group 3LW was, or way back in 1996. Okay, so it's not that way back. That's all kind of perspective, so let's just go on. So we got this guy today who's actually current and modern. You can go and find him on iTunes right now. One of the artists that I'm going to introduce to you this morning is a guy by the name of Olafur Arnalds. Anybody heard of Olafur Arnalds? I didn't think so. He is an Icelandic producer who came on the scene not too long ago, but this is one of the things I love. I actually love this guy's music. Highly recommend it. Go find it on iTunes, wherever you stream your music. And I love this guy because he's on multiple of my different playlists. See, I love music. I shared that with you last week, but I love music because my music reflects the mood that I'm in. And so my week is kind of blocked out and chunked out by different tasks and different responsibilities, but then also I have corresponding playlists that go with those different tasks and responsibilities. And so on Wednesdays, I actually spend the entire Wednesday from morning and through evening writing the message and getting ready for Sunday morning. And so this guy, this and Pete's Dragon, that's also a great soundtrack, by the way, are the ones that dominate my Wednesday writing playlist. Now, you're all going to go home and listen to the Pete's Dragon soundtrack and thank me for that little tidbit, too. But so I love this guy, and here's what I've found out. I actually found out that Arnold actually has kind of created waves in the classical music scene. Because he does a ton of stuff for that classical music from guys like Chopin and Bach and stuff. But then what he does is he layers all of this new electronic sound on top of this. And what it creates is this magical kind of musical landscape. It's very, very melancholy, very kind of pensive. It's thought-provoking, perfect to write to on a Wednesday. And so that's what's captivated my heart and captivated my ears. But the thing about this is what he's done is he's layered all of these things on top of it. He's taken something that you've heard before, and he's actually remixed it in a way to create something new. But you and I, we're used to this. We're used to somebody layering things on top of other things. Maybe it's things that you've heard or things that you've seen. And we come to this place where we're used to it, and we actually now have to try and pick through the layers, right? Like we hear this thing like people saying, well, that's just a little white lie. We call it a little white lie when somebody layers something on top of another thing and kind of creates their own variation of it. It's not necessarily a remix, it's a white lie, actually. And a white lie is defined, simply put, very, very simple. It's a harmless or trivial lie. So when you research this online, they're actually saying that there's a difference between a white lie and some other variation of lie that they haven't really identified yet. Because a white lie, apparently, it only affects one person. So says Wikipedia. However, I think we're going to find something a little bit different. See, we're used to these white lies because at work you hear them all the time, right? People talk about how great their job performance is. They talk about how many things that they've accomplished, and they talk about these little white lies, and yet somewhere you're sitting off at another desk, maybe a cubicle over, and you're like, what? Like you kind of want to crane your head up over and be like, he didn't do that. Like, you know these things. Or how about in parenting, right? We love to brag about our kids' accomplishments, but can your kid really spell any word? I mean, like, honestly, like, you talk to these people, oh, my kid is an amazing speller. Really? Any word? Yes. He's like 18 months old. How's this possible, right? Like, it's not possible. We exaggerate things, we tell white lies, and we use our language to enhance our image. Very often, it's common, it's normal, it's accepted. We kind of walk through life figuring that somebody else is layering something on top of the truth, right? And what the problem is that if Wikipedia says it's not that big a deal because it doesn't impact anybody else, the reality is it impacts a ton of people. Our words, they catch a whole lot of responsibility. Our words impact many other people. Because after all, listen, every parent thinks that their kid is the funniest, the smartest, the most talented. But what about the moments in life where the questions you may be asked carry a little bit more weight to it? So it's not just, hey, is your kid actually the smartest, or is he actually the talented? But what about these questions that they require your words to be a little bit more precise? White lies we may run into some trouble. Like, if your boyfriend were to say, will you marry me? And you're like, maybe, I don't know. Like, you might need to be a little bit more precise with your language there. Or the detective says, hey, where were you the night of? And you're like, I thought that was your job. Like, aren't you supposed to figure that out? Or your wife says, do these jeans make me look fat? Let me tell you, the answer is always no, okay? White lie or no white lie, the answer is always no. Or this one, I think many of us actually asked this question this week. Is it okay to look up at the eclipse with your eyes? Like, is that okay? Can we do that? See, it seemed that everybody had an opinion on this. Everybody had an opinion where we were trying to figure this whole thing out as a family, because my youngest, Leah, she was so concerned. Like, she was legitimately fearful to go to school on Monday. Because she was like, they're not letting us go out on the playground. We can't go outside at this point in time because they said we're going to go blind if this happens. And so y'all laugh, but this was the honest conversation in my house. And she goes, but it's happening at like 2:50 to 3:30. And that's when I get picked up. And I know what's going to happen is I'm going to go outside and I'm just not going to be able not to look at it. Like, I'm not going to be able not to check it out. So she was in a full-on panic, like a crisis mode. So she wanted to wear this hooded sweatshirt to school so that she could put it up and going to walk all emo back to the car like, don't talk to me, like, I'm not looking at you. This was the reality of my world. So we did a little bit of research. You know, like every other family in the world, you jump on Google. You ask your assistant Google, say, hey, can we look at the sun with nothing on, right? Well, clothes on, nothing on your eyes. I know where you were going with this. So we found an expert online. His name is Jerry Brooks. Did anybody else see Jerry? This is the expert, Jerry. Jerry, and so here's the thing. Like, we were full on into this video. It's like a 2-minute video. And we're watching it, and I'm like, here, this guy, he's proving this. He's proving that we don't need these glasses. See, I didn't want to buy the glasses because I'm the guy that says that Amazon's just making a ton of money off these glasses, right? And so Jerry says, you don't need these. And I'm like, babe, look, he's got a NASA jumpsuit on. Like, this is legitimate, right? Like, this is for real. He's legit. And so at first glance, I'm sold. I'm like, he's a NASA jumpsuit, which probably means he knows what he's talking about. What could go wrong? And then this happened. The video took a little bit of a turn, and he pulls out 2 Oreos to explain the eclipse. And I'm like, wait a second, those look like Tic Tacs and Oreos. NASA, I think, like, if we can send a shuttle to the moon, we probably can get a little bit better illustration of what an eclipse looks like, right? And then there was a moment when I was like, now we're just off the rails. Like, I don't think this is it. Jerry explains his opinion on how you don't need to buy these glasses. He has a solution for you. Check it out.
So you can make your own glasses for safety. Basically, you just get some glasses from the Dollar Tree, and then you can get yourself some Cusco. Cusco's good for anything. And then you just take this, and you just put it all over your glasses like this. And when you smear it on them glasses, that Cusco just goes right over it, and it's going to protect your retina and your cornea from all them UV rays. So this will protect you during the eclipse.
Yep, that's true. Cusco's good for anything, and it will protect King Cornelius from the evil rays of the sun. Right? Like, at that point in time, I'm like, Wait a second, Jerry. I don't think you know what you're talking about. I will not be going to the Dollar Tree to get me some glasses and smearing Crisco on them. We live in Florida. Even if that did work and I stared at the sun for 15 minutes of all eclipse, Crisco is going to melt off my face and then I'm going to get King Cornelius burned till he can't see no more, right? This is what's going to happen. And then Crisco's going to stain my shirt and Tiffany's going to be like, how do I get Crisco out of your shirt? Problems. We've got problems, people. But here's what we know to be true. The world lies to us everywhere, and it appears like it's a little white lie. It just feels like this, like, it's not a problem. And I've watched a lot of his other videos. They're actually really funny, like really good dude. But we've come to this reality that we live in a world, in a day and age where we have to wonder what the other person is saying. Is it true? Like, that's the question that we ask ourselves. Is it true? Is it fake news? Is it Facebook news? Is it true? And the problem is that this actually isn't a new problem. Jesus is addressing this problem, and he's got a few words for us today. Whether you are a Christ follower, whether you would call yourself a Christian, there is some just foundational truths about what it means to be a man or woman of integrity when it comes to your words that Jesus is going to share with us today. And I hope to help us see that. So Jesus said this phrase, you've heard it said 6 times in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, on the Sermon on the Mount, because he was correcting a common worldview. Jesus was correcting what everybody else thought that they knew, and he was saying, well, you've heard it said, but I want to say something different to you. 6 times Jesus uses this phrase. But here in Matthew 5, verse 33 through 37, I want to invite you to turn in your Bibles or follow along with me on screen or swipe over in your app. Whatever it is, get into this text on page 678 on the Bibles around you. See, Matthew is retelling this kind of famous message on the mountain, the Sermon on the Mount, and he looks at what Jesus has to say about your words, my words. Last week, we talked about how Jesus kind of confronted the emotions of our world. He's confronting the deep recesses of your heart, of hatred, the emotion of hatred. And today, Jesus is actually confronting the way that we use our language. In verse 33, he says, Jesus is speaking, he says, again, you've heard it said. It was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows that you've made. See, he's using the phrase, do not break your oath. This is what's been said. Do not break your oath, but fulfill the vows that you've made to the Lord, or fulfill the vows that you've made. See, in the roots of this is found in the fact that human beings, over the course of time, have misused their language in order to achieve a desired result. They've reused, they've said all kinds of things in order to achieve the result that they want. To get more land, to get more money, to get more power, more possessions, whatever it may be, people use their language in order to get that accomplished. They use their language to affect their image. And because of this misuse, Judaism developed this very, very elaborate system of oaths and vows. Ways to ensure that people knew that what you were saying was actually true. It was to guarantee that the words that you were using were true. It's why on every solar eclipse glasses, there was some sort of approach to it where it said, like, this is approved by NASA, or this is approved by the American Astronomical Society. This stamp, or that image, that guarantee that these glasses were properly made to protect your eyes. Otherwise, there'd be some jokers out there selling their own version of eclipse glasses like this. Surely you saw this somewhere on the internet this week. We have this all over in our society. That's why there are approvals. That's why there's certifications, because there's a baseline problem in our world. And you and I think we all could agree to this, that loose language loses trust. This is the first point if you're taking notes today. Loose language loses trust. When you and I, when we're not careful with our words, when we just kind of allow our words to go whichever direction and say whatever, we lose trust. Some of you have experienced this in a relationship. Some of you experienced this in the workplace. Some of you may have been the victim of losing trust through loose language. See, the misuse of language or little white lies, they lead people to mistrust you. And in order to regain trust, the problem is that people have to swear by this or that. They got to take oaths. They've got to tell you, oh man, I swear that this is true, what I'm about to tell you. See, this is common. This is normal. You and I experience this. And Jesus, in his day and age, he's confronting this exact thing. You've heard it said, this is normal. But Jesus says this, but I tell you, you've heard it said, but I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. Just don't do it. Don't swear an oath. Because why? Don't swear an oath by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by the earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the great city of the great king. Do not swear by your head, for you cannot even make one hair white or black. See, in this day and age, what they were doing is they were actually telling little white lies, and when they would be loose with their language, they'd have to go and prove that what they were saying was true. And if they couldn't prove it, they'd have to fake it till they made it. And in both Jewish and Gentile worlds, there was this idea that an oath would invoke the authority of something else. So if I were to swear by something, it would take on the authority of that thing. And if I didn't follow through, that thing would have to repay my oath. So when he's saying, do not swear by your head, it means that I swear by my head and my head will repay, or you can have my head if I do not repay you. I swear by God, I swear by heaven, I swear by Jerusalem. And they would say all these different things. And oaths almost became like a contest to see who could bring in the biggest power to enforce the most maximum result at the end. It was a contest, but there's a problem here. The problem here is that when you swear by something, you're in the position of control and authority. And you're saying, I'm promising you that if I falter or if I fail in this other thing will do this. And here's the deal. You have no control over that situation. It's like purchasing a house, right? Like when you go and you walk through 4,000 homes, you look at them all on Zillow, and then you're like, here's the 10 that I actually want to see. You then sit down or you broker the deal with another real estate agent, and you say, this is the home I want to buy. And that other agent says, well, how are you financing that home? I need to see a pre-approval letter, or I need to see some documentation that says there is actually money backing up what it is that you have said you're going to pay. And in this moment, are you in control? In fact, this is the scariest moment as a home buyer, because you are like the least position of control in the entire world, it seems like. Everybody else has some kind of control at that point in time. You may think you're in control just because you have some paper or because you have a mortgage company backing you, but even till the very last mortgage payment, you are not in control. Try not paying your mortgage this month. See how that works out. You're not in control. And so Jesus is using the same idea. He's saying, you're swearing by all this stuff. You're swearing by God as if God's going to just do whatever you swore he would do. It's putting God in a position where he serves you rather than you and I are meant and we were created to serve God. Jerusalem doesn't serve you. Your head doesn't serve you. You can't control a hair turning white, gray, or remaining the same color. In fact, a moment of honesty. This week I found a white hair in my beard. This is a problem. This is like we've achieved a problem, people. Like, come on. But I can't control that thing. I can pull it out, but it's just going to come back. I cannot control that. We have zero control. And what it's doing is that Jesus is actually saying it's foolish. It's foolish for you to make an oath or swear by something because you have no control over it. And yet again, this week, Jesus is actually peeling back another layer. He's going deeper than just what's on the surface because he's revealing our second point. And that it's that, yes, our words are hard to control, but actually your words, they reveal your heart. Your words kind of reveal something underneath. And so when a person, when they have to swear by something, there's still this illusion of the fact that they have some kind of control over this, that they have some measure of control over what may happen in the outcome of this. See, several months ago, I found myself going into a situation that my words were, they actually revealed my heart. And it's a little embarrassing, but I'll share it with you anyway. I was at a conference, at the ARC conference, and it was in Birmingham, Alabama. And so ARC is the Association of Related Churches, the organization that we are a part of here at Hope City. And I'm standing around with a whole bunch of other very, very hipster-looking pastors, like way hipster-ish than me and way cooler looking, and they got better glasses and all this stuff, and their head is shaved too. They've got a stronger beard than me, and all this kind of stuff. And so somehow the conversation always turns. Just if you're with pastors, don't ask them this question because it makes us always feel insecure. But they said, so how many people are coming to your church now? And I was like, oh yeah. Well, we had a really great day recently. We had about 575 people there, and people actually came in helicopters, and yeah, it was great. And in that moment, I was like, that was Easter, and that was like 6 months ago, 4 months ago, however long ago that was. And I don't know what happened. I don't know why I said what I said. And before you judge me, you've had those moments too where you've said something and you'd be like, that wasn't true. Why did I even say that? And in that moment, I was like, wait, actually, we have about 200 people. And we actually just went down to one service because 2 wasn't working. And so I started kind of going back. I had to backpedal because what was going on in my heart was actually, I wanted my words to make myself look better. I wanted to stand amongst some peers and some friends and some new acquaintances and say, yeah, we're really doing a great job in Florida, and here's the math to prove it, all this kind of stuff. See, my heart wanted to look good. It wanted to appear better than others, and I'm afraid that I'm not alone in this. I'm afraid that, unfortunately, you've done this too somewhere along the lines because our words reveal our hearts, and this is what Jesus is getting at. He's driving deep into our hearts, and he's saying, you need to be so careful what your heart is about. And your words will often reveal it. Sometimes we can explain it away as a white lie. Like, were any of those guys hurt by it? No. It's not going to affect them. But it was still critical that I was responsible with the words that I was using. Sometimes our desire to be more important it gets in the way, or our desire to be cooler or to be accepted or to appear wiser or more successful or whatever gets in the way of the words that we're actually saying. And our hearts get focused on what others think about us rather than what is most important. In fact, Pastor Craig Groeschel, he put it this way. He said, becoming obsessed with what others think of you is actually the fastest way to forget what God thinks of you. And in the moment when I'm standing there with some of these pastor friends and I'm like, yeah, I've put their value of me higher than God's value of me. And that's when things get twisted and get wildly out of control. See, what matters most, or what God thinks of you, should be what matters most, and yet sometimes we get to the place where what others think of us begins to kind of elevate itself and begins to matter more. Your words, they reveal your heart. The things that you say reveals what's going on inside of you. Maybe it's even flipped. Maybe now it's a different kind of what's in your heart. You're in a disagreement with a friend or kind of one of those heated discussions with a spouse, and those words are starting to fly, and all of a sudden you hit that spot where something comes out, and it's the moment you've gone and said something too far. She looks across at you and she says, so that's how you really feel. Or maybe she says something and you're like, oh, now I finally see. See, words, they reveal what's going on in our hearts. They reveal how somebody else feels. And a heart that's focused on itself will always be tempted to stretch the truth, exaggerate its accomplishments, and minimize everything else and everyone else. See, this is normal. This is what's accepted. This is what's common and true. But Christ calls us to something far greater. And whether you follow Jesus or not, there's something better and greater. Your words are used for something more than that. You've heard it said, Jesus says, but I say to you, look it back in verse 37, what he says. I say to you, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Have you done this? I swear I did this. Will you do this? I swear I'm going to do it. Jesus says, no. All you need to say is yes or no. Jesus drives to such a simple point because let your yes be yes and just let no be no. Whatever it is, keep it simple. Why? Because your words affect more people than just yourself. Every single person who hears your voice is impacted and affected by your words. Even a whisper has power. Even the softest whisper. Because your words aren't one-sided. When you speak, it affects other people. They make an impact on everyone who hears them. And Jesus, understanding that, is calling you and I to something even far greater. He's saying it's not about oaths. Like if you swear an oath on the stand, like, yeah, that's fine. That's not what Jesus is saying. He's saying, at your heart, be accountable to your words. Like he's calling us to be accountable to the words that we say, the things that come out of our mouths. It's hard to say, I didn't mean that, when that's actually what you said. I didn't mean that. Well, why did you say that then? Be accountable to your words. Jesus has showed us that it's all about our heart, which is not about the outward appearance, but the way that we sound or how intelligent we appear gets often in the way for us. Proverbs 4:23. This is one of my favorite verses because it simplifies it so well. It says, above all else, guard. Above everything else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. See, your heart is the birthplace of your thoughts and your desires, and from there, they grow into your words. The things that come out of your heart, the thoughts, it starts to sprout and take on a different like frame, and then all of a sudden you're speaking words about something, and from your heart, it all starts. Our life flows from our hearts. But too often the opposite is true. Too often we look at life and we inform our hearts based upon what's happening in life, when it really should be the opposite way around. We should inform life based upon what we know to be true in our hearts. And so why is it that when we're at work and work is disappointing us and maybe somebody's hurt you and we start to feel aggravated, and we use this other phrase that's common, that it's hardened my heart, or I've become kind of callous to that person? Well, that's because we're reading it backwards. We're reading life situations into our hearts rather than our heart reading into a life situation. Or maybe this is something that's happening at home. Maybe something's going on in your home, and the circumstance is so depressing, so overwhelming that you start slipping into this fear of the future, or an anxiety even. And you're allowing the circumstances, or what you think to be true about the circumstances of your life, to override what you know to be true about what God says, about who you are, and what your life is like. See, our words, they reveal our hearts. You and I, we can't control the outcome, for sure. But we can control our response to all of those different situations. And in this, Jesus is inviting us to be accountable to our words. And as I was thinking about this week, there is nothing profound that I'm about to tell you. But I think it's just a great reminder that in order for you and I, in order for us to be accountable to our words, there are 3 things that we can do. I'd love for you to write them down. The first one is that we can just delay what we say. We can delay it. There are times when what you're about to say, you may be best served by just waiting. See, I'm personally convinced that there is really no conversation that I should be going into where I haven't had some kind of thoughts ahead of time about that conversation. Because I know, just like that conversation at the conference, my heart gets ahead of my head. It gets beyond it. And then I start saying things based upon what I'm feeling rather than what I've thought through. And it gets me in trouble. Just delay it. Slow down. There's no reason to say anything that you haven't thought through already. The second thing, again, not rocket science, but a good reminder, is that there are times when we just have to filter it. Just filter it. This past week it happened to me. I was with a group of 8 people. My wife was in the room, and she could hear that I was going in a certain direction, and she kind of gave me that look like, oh, don't say it, don't do that, don't go there. And in that moment I was like, nope, I'm not going to say it. It actually doesn't, it's no good. It is of no value. Filter it. There are times when it's just not worth saying. Some things are not worth it. Maybe it's not appropriate. Maybe it doesn't add value to that situation. Maybe it's still true, but it won't be understood by other people because they don't know the context. See, you and I might get to a place where we have to filter the words that we use. And the third thing is this, and I'm afraid that this is the area that you're all like, yeah, I'm signing off on delaying it, and I can definitely filter it. But this is the third one, is the one that we actually need to practice. And that's to own it. We need to own it. You need to actually just say, you know what? What I just said didn't actually happen. I didn't catch a fish this big. It was actually that big. Or there wasn't 500 people at church last week. It was actually 203. Guys, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. It just kind of came out. There are moments in your life when you need to own it. When you just need to say, yeah, that's actually not true. I'm sorry. This was it. And correct it. Say you're sorry. Move beyond it, because your words are powerful. Communication is critical. Like we understand this on a base level. It directs our relationships with other people. And one of the most important things that Jesus says, apart from loving God, the most important thing that you and I can do, Jesus says, is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And the second thing is to love your neighbor as yourself. The most important thing, apart from loving God, is loving others. And the way that you and I use our language directly impacts the way that we love other people. If we're just loose with our language and just kind of whatever we want to say, just say it, we will not be great at loving other people. See, love is always, always truthful. And let me ask you a question. How are you doing with your language? I don't mean like the words that are accepted or unaccepted. I mean the intent behind your language. How are you doing with that? What is your heart intending in the language that you're speaking? Because I think that, as Jesus has pointed out, that this is actually a critical item for you and I. That our emotions, the dealing with the emotions, the things that are inside of us that direct us, is critical. We've talked about that last week. And today, Jesus is saying that your words are also critical to what God has for your life. If we believe that loving God and loving others is core, then we better get a hold of the way that we speak. Because our words can be used to build people up, or they can be used to just tear people apart. Are you using your words to encourage one another? Or do you find it's actually just easier to pick apart and find the problems that everybody else has? But words also affect us corporately. Maybe personally that's where you're at, but here at Hope City, we've determined that this is actually a place where you can go, where people can find hope and they can experience home. And few people want to go to a place where others talk about them, where they're hurt by words, or where words are used to simply just judge people. Imagine how powerful it could be if here at Hope City, our words were used to welcome others, to encourage others, to help others, to say, you know what, I've actually been there too. I know what you're going through. Our words carry so much weight. And Jesus makes it so simple. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Mean what you say, and say what you mean.